With a ginormous library of games, we have to laser focus into the Triforce of the Nintendo Switch. Pokemon, Mario, and Zelda. We're going to look at each of these three hugely popular games and look at the major criticism of each game. And on the other side, maybe you'll change your opinion about them. We're going for the king first. Here we go, Mario. When anyone talks about Super Mario Odyssey, the one thing always seems to come up. Are there too many moons? And is it just too easy to collect these moons? And that is probably linked with also the open world design and it feeling empty from time to time. In certain levels, especially the Sand Kingdom, I hear this complaint all the time. But the laser focusing of this issue actually comes from a developmental choice and vision for Mario games, specifically. At its core, Mario games are made for children. When you have that overarching umbrella and that vision in mind, when you look at some of these moon placements, it kind of makes sense. You want a young child to be able to see something off in the distance or something very close, go to it, this little glowing object, and grab it and feel accomplished. And knowing that this can be done in succession very quickly, I think that increases engagement for a younger child because they're always doing something and they're always getting rewarded for it. And that's not just moons, there's also the purple coins over there. And, well, actually those coins themselves, I can go to a store and buy a moon. Oh, I can even change my outfit as well. When you link that to this bigger open style levels, you can then see how exploring is rewarded because there's enough stimuli, quote unquote, to be found and the loop keeps going. So when you're seeing people talk about this game and that rage starts to filter up and you're like, whoa, but it's so easy, why are there so many moons? It's made for kids. Take a breath. It's made for kids. And I think the ingenious design with that in mind is the kids will be able to make it to the final boss then, and then the difficulty ramps up. Are you trying to long jump over those little platforms while the bullet bill is chasing you? It's tedious. It's nerve-wracking. Now, could they have balanced this out a little bit more where some moons are a little bit more challenging? Of course, but I actually think that is in this game. There are definitely the moons you can just go over to it, butt stomp, maybe you have to climb up a small series of objects, and you're good to go. But I do find the more timed ones, or where you have to use a lot more platforming back to back, those can be a little bit more challenging, and you might not seek those out right away, or the kid might not, but you as an adult might not get frustrated as quickly as a small child. And again, when you're getting more complex movesets, so like when you're in New Donk City, you're rewarded for going out of your way and finding a secret corner or a secret building. Those moments are there. The challenge can be there as well. Trying to corral some sheep? Ooh. But I can see if you're not the collect-a-thon type of person, that the sprinkling of challenge might not be enough for you. But again, you have to go back that this is made for children. They want as many people to play a 3D Mario game as possible. Whether you want that to be the case or not, it's just how it works. Why wouldn't you want to have a fun game for children to play? And if you make it through the end and you don't find that this is challenging, that's okay too. Maybe this isn't the style of Mario game that you want to gravitate towards. Or you can impose, like many people do out there, some more challenges for yourself. Restrict yourself to certain moves, make up timers, start trying to speedrun it. Whatever you want to do to increase the challenge, that is okay. Obviously, if you're looking for that type of experience, you shouldn't have to fabricate it yourself, but it's there if you need to. So this might be just bright garbage for children, but it's Super Mario Odyssey. I do have to pick on this one. Slightly better graphics than Super Mario 64. It's really easy to hate on Pokemon, the biggest intellectual property of all, and their games don't run that great on modern consoles. The jump from our little handhelds to the Switch hasn't been great. Pokemon has also been very stingy with their willingness to change up the formula. But that all changed with Pokemon Legends Arceus. We got something different. But what does everybody laser focus on, just like with Pokemon Shield? Is the graphics, the frame rate, or the menial tasks of catching Pokemon and research. that latter point, isn't that what you're here to do? You are here to collect Pokemon? Isn't that the whole driving force behind the IP in general? You want to be that kid again, go off out into the world and collect these cool little creatures. And yes, this is an entry level to the JRPG genre, but that doesn't mean they should cut corners. And they should make it, the difficulty ramp up, which I think this game does, especially with the added elements of this real-time battling with these enraged Pokemon. But like we talked about before, yes, these are made for children. But the one thing that I think every time I play this game is, I don't care that bush over there pops in as I walk by it, or that rock looks pretty dated, because at the core of it, I'm just having fun exploring this world and catching Pokemon. Now, I'm sure you're even looking at the footage that I collected and you're thinking, that doesn't look that good. And yeah, it's not that great. But I don't think about that when I'm actually playing because I'm having fun. And this game does a wonderful job of constantly reinforcing you that you're working towards another goal. There are so many different research things you have to do for the Pokemon in this one. It's not just about completing the Pokedex, it's about doing the research. You're the first one that is going to complete the Pokedex for all the future generations out there. And yeah, should I give this billion-dollar company a pass? No, not really, but I have to go back to it. When I'm playing this game, I was having fun. I was smiling. This was the type of Pokemon game I've always wanted. Do I think they can do better in the future? Well, yeah, Scarlet and Violet does. Ignore that. But we are getting another entry in the series, and maybe within like 10 years we'll get an even better iteration of this game. I don't need the giant open world Pokemon, kind of like the Breath of the Wild comparisons that we always see. I want it to be like this, open world regions, and just get it a little bit more detailed. And the hopes I have is now Game Freak is working on an actual console versus a handheld, so they have to, they have to develop those chops. I don't begrudge anyone that wants stable frame rates or better looking graphics. I can't take away that when I booted up this game, I was planning on just grabbing a couple of little clips, and I played for an hour and a half. It just sucked me right back in. I don't believe this is a skippable experience. I think if you are a Pokemon fan, you should definitely give this one a shot, especially because if you're clamoring for something different, this is very different than any other Pokemon game out there. If you're not counting spin-offs, of course. And maybe I am a sadistic completionist, and that's okay. I am sometimes, but I actually find the research part of this game to be refreshing compared to what we had before. But for some reason, now I have the bug to play Black and White because I missed that one. Maybe I should do that next. When an IP tries something new and skyrockets to popularity, of course there's going to be people that look at that and realize, well, there's obviously something wrong. And the major complaints that I see wrapped into Breath of the Wild is a boring open world and breakable weapons. And the boring open world comes back to they changed the core concept of Zelda games. There's no big dungeons. Or at least the Divine Beasts are big in scale, but in complexity and everything like that, it's a little bit scaled back. Because now all of your dungeon and puzzle solving is in these shrines. One conclusion I always come to is Breath of the Wild has a lot of similarities to Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask scaled down their dungeons quite considerably compared to Ocarina of Time, and it really decided to focus more on the people of Hyrule. Kind of akin how Breath of the Wild is more about exploring Hyrule itself. That is what brings this game characters, where Majora's Mask is more about the townsfolk. And don't get me wrong, Breath of the Wild has a lot of strange characters. The beetle merchant, the heroes that helped out Link on his adventure in the past. But both of these entries are different from what came before. And that is why the weapon degradation is key to this whole situation. People don't like it because you find a good sword and it breaks very quickly. But that's the whole design about this game. They want you to keep pushing out and pushing forward. Because this is Breath of the Wild, you're supposed to go out there and explore. And you're supposed to scavenge everything you can to survive in this crazy changed wilderness. The Great Plateau sets this up so perfectly where you're just scavenging for apples, cutting down trees. You see a couple enemies and you have to attack them and you realize you're running out of stuff, so you throw your weapon at them before it breaks and you pick up their weapon and you knock out the other guy. Oh, and that sentry over there, they finally dropped their bow after I smacked them a couple times, so now I have a bow and arrow. The game sets you up to keep exploring. And the one way to do that is if all your equipment breaks, so you're always looking for something new. Now, do I find this successful in every iteration? Absolutely not. It can become annoying here and there, but I don't think I'd want this to be any other way. I wouldn't want to find just one sword and that's all I use for the rest of the game, because then I wouldn't be experimenting and throwing stuff and lighting something on fire. So even if they did the exact same thing without the weapon breaking, honestly, I don't think it would work as well. And that's a pretty staunch stance I'm taking on this one, but there it is. Now, when you think about the combat and you're always looking for the next thing and you're constantly worried about items and resources, the open world, how it's not as filled with crazy markers and all that jazz, it kind of has a breathing effect. As long as you're not in a very cold environment or a very hot, you can relax as you're going from place to place. You can climb that mountain over there and then stand up there and just watch the sunrise. I think this dichotomy offsets one another. You have this open world that definitely has a lot going on there, but there is a lot of open space to breathe. So you get a moment of peace while you're so worried about the frantic nature of gathering all these resources, because you can't defeat that freaking Lionel over the hill there. And obviously I have had years to gestate on this. So when I read comments about this isn't my Zelda, this isn't a Zelda game at all, it's a very bad Zelda game, I just kind of roll my eyes. One, this is very similar to the NES original, and I think there was outliers even before this game. Again, Majora's Mask. This is Zelda in a different environment, but it still feels so much like a Zelda game. You still have all your musical cues, your items, your off-kilter characters, and most importantly, you have Link and Zelda. So even with the very opposing design choices of making a less populated world and degrading weapons and armor and all that, it still feels like Zelda. And I believe those were the right choices. So yeah, you're probably not in a rush to finish those quests, but I think there is a reason. You want to save Zelda, you want to save Hyrule, but you don't have to rush. Take your time. I expect everybody to completely agree with this video, so I won't have to do any follow-up or go even further diving into the gameplay or the design choices of any one of these 3 games. Or perhaps even 3 different other games. Maybe you have a suggestion yourself.